Good day, everyone. This is Bob Roswick at the Bismarck Air Museum. With me today is Tom Trousdale, our docent, and we're here to talk about the Lockheed Loadstar. How you doing today, Tom?
Great, Bob.
What we have here is a Continental aircraft. Tell us a little bit about this airplane, Tom.
Well, the Loadstar was a workhorse of its day. It was probably beside the DC-3, it was the biggest workhorse in the 30s and 40s for airlines. Most airlines flew some version of the Loadstar, including Northwest. Continental Airlines started out as a small little carrier flying between Denver and Colorado Springs and into the Arizona, New Mexico area. And they started growing, and this is probably taken at Pueblo or one of the early airports that they served. The Loadstar hauled between 12 to 14 people. A high-density version, you could get it up to 20 people, but the high-density version didn't allow the nice seating that the airlines had with 12 or 14. It was more like riding today. Your knees probably touched the seat in front of you. You see there a typical crew of the time, the pilot, the co-pilot, and the stewardess. I think Continentals hauled 14 people. They didn't squeeze them in as much as some other carriers did. It was an interesting airplane. It developed and made Continental from a small airline to a local service carrier, and enabled them to grow into where it became, probably 40 years into the future, the proud bird with the golden tail.
So when you talk about this type of an aircraft, this is Continental. Were they making money hauling passengers back then?
They were making money hauling passengers back then. That's right. The Loadstar, the more seats you put in it, the more money that you made. But some airlines, because of they didn't lengthen the airplane, they just put in more seats. And some airlines realized we're going to turn off as many people as we probably get if the revenue if we wedge them in there and squeeze them in, because one of the early complaints on some of the carriers was they ought to give you a shoehorn to fit into the seat. They were so compacted.
All right. And what do we have here, Tom?
This is a Loadstar of United Airlines. Believe it or not, when I talk to some of my pilot friends, you can win some bar bets or you have someone buy a round of drinks, because you can say, what airline didn't fly Loadstars? And everybody usually guesses United, because they think, well, United had the Boeing 247, they had the DC-3. Why would they be flying around Loadstars? Well, they flew Loadstars to places like Rock Springs, Wyoming, and Pueblo, Colorado, and little places in between where it didn't pay to take in the DC-3. But, yep, United flew Loadstars, and they flew Loadstars from the early 40s, I think, until mid-40s. And it was an interim aircraft, but they definitely got the use out of them.
Yeah, this is a beautiful picture. These are from a set of, these are watercolors, right, Tom?
These are watercolors. These were awarded, and of course, I didn't get these by flying 1,000,000 miles on United. These went to people that flew almost literally 1,000,000 miles a year on United Airlines. This was back in the days when the airlines really courted you and wanted you to be a passenger. I got these from a sales manager for the Chrysler Corporation, who is a good friend of mine. He got the whole set from United Airlines for flying on them, and he was quite a character. He said, I said, have you ever raised your voice on an airplane? And the reason I asked that was because he said, yeah, I was screaming at the top of my lungs one time because I was on a 727. He was a former Navy pilot, and they started to take off, and they didn't put the slats down. The slats are the things that go down on the front part of the wings to increase the lift on the wings. They did put the flaps down, but they didn't put the slats down, and he was screaming bloody murder. So he probably saved everybody that was on that airplane because of his looking out the window and yelling at the top of his lungs.
This picture, I don't want to do this to you, Tom, but we have a little window back here that I find kind of amusing. My guess is that's just some lighting for the compartment that holds the luggage.
Yes, it is, although as funny as it sounds, that is the luggage compartment. But as funny as it sounds, American Airlines had a little window on the bathroom on the DC-3, and they had curtains on it. As someone's going to be looking and as you're tooling along.
Okay. And here we just have a gorgeous picture. What can you tell us about this picture, Tom?
This is a really beautiful picture. You can see that it is probably an airplane that covers a lot of miles because it's got 2 ADFs. It's got high frequency radios on it. Look at all the antennas it's got on. It's got a directional loop antenna in the front there on the nose. This is obviously a corporate Loadstar that is well loved and well taken care of, and if the outside looks this good, you can bet the interior looks fantastic.
We're going to see a couple of those at the end of this slideshow. The one thing I find interesting about this picture is how come I can see rubber?
Well, this was one thing that Lockheed was in love with up until their model 1649 in 1957. Up until that, they always used the old rubber de-icers, I guess, for want of a better word, where we talked about on the DC-3, where when you got into ice, you would wait till the ice had formed on the aircraft and then activate the rubber, and by pulsating it, it would usually get rid of the ice. The bad part about this was the rubber de-icers like this could literally be overwhelmed, and we'll talk about that here in a bit.
The other thing I just happened to notice is we got a little rubber sticking out down below too here. We got a little rubber here and a little rubber here. They just didn't go to the full covers on their wheel wells, did they?
No, they didn't, and that was a safety feature again. The early airplanes started with the DC-3 and the B-17 having a little bit of the wheel that would slip or stay into the slipstream and not retract all the way, just in case you had to do a wheels-up landing, that you wouldn't scrape along and cause sparks by the wing dragging on the runway and perhaps cause a fire. It was basically a safety feature that they hoped would not cause a fire and start an explosion.
Yeah, we're lucky to have a nice picture like this. It really does show you a lot about this aircraft. Tom, the Loadstar is proving to be a pretty interesting airplane, so we're going to bring this episode to an end, and we're going to bring you back for the conclusion of the Lockheed Loadstar with our next episode. The Bismarck Air Museum Foundation is trying to capture hangar number 5 that you see before you and convert it into an air museum. If you want to read about it, log on to bismarckairmuseum.org. If you'd like to make a donation, you can do so on that site. Log on to Facebook and watch us at Bismarck Air Museum. Also, if you like these presentations, subscribe to our channel on YouTube. I'd like to thank everybody for listening.